Good evening and welcome to the second edition of Minority Caucus on JoyNews TV. I remain your host for the 2020 edition, and my name is Obobia Daakun Opoku. Our maiden edition was revealing and intriguing with discussions around the famous PDS scandal, one of the biggest scams ever perpetrated against the good people of Ghana. Today's edition promises to be more intriguing. Once again, let me extend our thanks to the management of JoyNews TV and multimedia for the platform to reach out to Ghanaians with the NDC story and how we will better govern and develop this beautiful country of ours. The John Mahama-led administration spent its 4 years focused on building and developing infrastructure such as roads, power generation, ports, building of hospitals, schools, tertiary education institutions, housing projects, amongst a host of others. Last night, we were greeted with a presentation littered with distorted facts, and as our communications officer rightly puts, it was a comical celebration of mediocrity, where projects stated and started by the John Mahama administration were touted as achievements of the NPP government. Notable amongst them is the Pokwase-Tema motorway and the Obechebi interchanges. The most intriguing of all is when Bawumia asserted that the NDC only completed 29 E-blocks, whereas his education minister on Asempa FM's Ekosi sang on March 6, 2017, made a contrary opinion of 46 completed E-blocks. How intriguing. Tonight, on Minority Caucus, we will further advance the infrastructure debate with the NDC's superior record in focus. I have in the studio a former Deputy Minister of Communication and the NDC's parliamentary candidate representing the good people of Abra Asebu Kwamankesi to discuss and lay bare the true facts of Mahama's unmatched infrastructural development versus government's untruths about their achievements in infrastructure. But before that, we will be right back.
We are also constructing 4 state-of-the-art interchanges. You have the Tema interchange, where the loan, the salt cutting, and the completion were executed by this government. We have the Tamale interchange under the Sino-Hydro program. This is the first ever interchange in the 5 northern regions of Ghana, and it's at 44% completion. Then we have the Pokwase interchange. This is a 4-tier interchange in West Africa. It's the first 4-tier interchange in West Africa. The first. That's the Pokwase interchange. We have the Obechebi-Lamte interchange, which is 55% complete.
Many other projects are ongoing, such as the Tema motorway roundabout decongestion project.
Good evening and welcome, Honorable Felix Ofosu Kwakye. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I see that you're running all over the place, granting interviews.
Duty calls after the much ado about nothing by Dr. Bawumia yesterday. It became necessary to correct what were gratuitous falsehoods, lies that were packaged as somehow intelligent conversations. There are many who may not have a deep appreciation of the issues, and so are likely to take what the Vice President says at face value. So it behoves those of us who were in the thick of affairs during the Mahama administration to correct the falsehoods that have been put out and hold government strictly to account on the basis of its own commitments to the people of Ghana. So
that takes me to my very first question, okay. Because at the end of the day, the much touted town hall meeting came off yesterday, and I wanted to take your first impression so far as the town hall meetings are concerned and yesterday's, and I'm just wondering, was it worth the hype?
Well, the first point that I need to make is that it is obvious that Dr. Bawumia held this event under duress, because the NPP has come under intense pressure from sections of the Ghanaian public to account for what they have done with what we estimate to be about 300 billion Ghana cedis in resources, from oil revenue, from loans contracted, from tax revenue, from grants, and support from other donor partners. Now, people have sought to look out for what tangible achievements they are in light of this level of resources that they've committed into the hands of the NPP. And it has not been forthcoming. So many are of the view that this government has simply not lived up to expectation. This notion also sits closely side by side with what is incontrovertible evidence of massive achievements by the NDC. Because people see that what little we had, we were able to make use of. And that across all sectors of national life, we have major capital investments to show. So this brought pressure to bear on the NPP. And they were keen, in fact desperate, to show that they had also done something with the monies that they received. Hence the organization of this event. But I knew, on the basis of evidence available, that they were not going to be able to say much. So I was not surprised when Dr. Bawumia had them puffed and was not able to show anything significant. Indeed, the objective, as I saw yesterday, was to show that not only had they done something, but they had done more than the NDC. In fact, they went as far as claiming, and Dr. Bawumia claimed, that they had done more in 4 years than the NDC did in 8 years under President Mills.
Exactly, and I'm just wondering what gives them that much confidence?
See, again, it is a tad arrogant, you know, for a government that finds itself in this position to even think that way. Look, they will be eviscerated surgically if they pitched the achievements against those of President Mahama. And I'm sure that as the discussion goes on, we'll be able to have opportunities to do sector by sector analysis. And it will become clear that President Akufo-Addo does not come close in terms of capital investments done by President Mahama. Now, but it gets even more funereal for them when they attempt to compare their 4-year record to the 8-year record of the NDC. There is no basis for comparison. Any attempt to do that will lead to a miserable outcome for them. Indeed, I will give you examples. Let us take education. Indeed, yesterday, Dr. Bawumia claimed that they had a total of 2,234 classroom blocks ongoing across all levels of the educational strata. And that out of that, they had completed 1,025, I believe. So that is what they had. Now, if you come to the kindergarten level alone under the NDC, we have 1,346. Indeed, let me indicate that apart from the Green Book, you know, the Ministry of Education actually did its own publication called the Ministry of Education, 4 Years of Equitable Access to Quality Education, 2013 to 2016, a picture book. So this is it. It is different. In fact, it's actually more voluminous.
That's just for the Ministry of Education.
It is just for the Ministry of Education. It's more voluminous than the Green Book. It's also green, actually, so you can call it the Education Green Book. Now, that book clearly shows that the NDC, just at the kindergarten level, put up 1,347 classroom blocks, just at kindergarten level. Now, because the NPP has sought to compare their 4 years to the 8 years of the NDC, it's necessary to show why it is suicidal for them to do so. Between 2010 and 2013, the Dan Mills administration started a total of 2,936 basic level classroom blocks. That is, classroom blocks for primary and JHS schools. 2,936. Out of that, 2,031 were completed. And you know that the famous schools under trees. It was part of that push. Between 2013 and 2016, another 1,129 classroom blocks were completed. If you add this up, we are talking about 3,378 for the basic level alone. If you add this to the 1,347, we are talking in excess of 5,000 classroom blocks between KG and JHS. When you come to the SHS level, President Akufo-Addo says he has done about 425 classroom blocks at the SHS level. Now, we have over 1,000 classroom blocks, over 180 dormitories, and what have you. Now, still at the SHS level, President Akufo-Addo says that he's working on 3 secondary schools. 3 secondary schools.
Yeah.
And then one of them has been completed. Indeed, it is in the slides that they themselves put out. President Mahama worked on 123 community-day senior high schools. At the time we were leaving office, 80 of them had risen off the ground and gotten to various levels of completion. 46 of them had been completed. Indeed, in some cases, like Krachi in Chumuru, school children had actually moved in, and they couldn't feel it. School children had actually moved in and had started using the buildings. 46. So even if we were to...
Yesterday, Dr. Bawumia quoted 29.
But that is completely false. Indeed, that is contradicted by his own education minister, who has confirmed that indeed 46 of those schools were completed. So Dr. Bawumia did not do his homework. He clearly did not know what he was talking about. Between the Minister of Education, who supervises the sector, and the Vice President, who only has, if you like, some arm's length oversight, I'm more inclined to go with the position of the Education Minister. In any event, I have firm knowledge of the matter because we're in government and we tracked it. Indeed, I have pictures and videos of those schools. So I don't even need the Education Minister or Dr. Bawumia to apprise me of exactly what we left. Now, even if we were to overlook the other community day schools that had not been completed at the time that we're living, that means that President Mahama has at least 46 secondary schools to his name. President Akufo-Addo has one secondary school to his name. This clearly is an abysmal record. When it comes to the tertiary level, the NDC has 3 universities. Professor Mills has 2 of them. He has the University of Health and Allied Sciences and the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Sunyani. President Mahama now has the University of Environment and Sustainable Development. He found $55 million for it, cut the sword on 29 December 2016. He indeed started work to secure an additional $70 million from Korea. He did all the processes. The only thing that stopped us was the IMF, program that we were under, which limited how much we could borrow at a time. So when we left, the 70 million dropped. And that's what we should have used for the Donko Krom campus, which the NPP refused to do, clearly on ethno-tribal lines, and took to Bonso, close to where President Akufo-Addo comes from. So President Akufo-Addo, as I speak to you, has approximately 0 universities to his name. So a record like that does not stand him in good stead to come and claim that he has done better than President Mahama or President Mills in the provision of infrastructure at the various levels of education. Now let's go to health. President Akufo-Addo's most significant achievement in health are 435 CHIPS compounds that he says he has started, out of which about 287 or so, I believe, he says have been completed. Now this looks like a joke.
Why do you say so?
When you compare it to what President Mahama did. We have 1,600 CHIPS compounds dotted across the country. 1,600. It is almost 8 times what President Akufo-Addo says he has done. 8 times.
The 1,600, was it done in 4 years or it was done in 8 years?
Done in 4 years. Indeed, I've discounted what President Mahama did. Sorry, President Mills did. Just to illustrate a point. Even those of us who were ministers, who contributed our monies out of our salaries to do CHIPS compound, we were able to do 12. So we have a solid track record. If you go to the Capital Investment Management Units of the Ministry of Health, they have records of this. Again, when you come to district hospital, President Akufo-Addo says he has one district hospital. In fact, that district hospital is what he cut the sword for today at Shama. And it is instructive that that thing costs $39 million. The agreement they took to Parliament for approval cost is $39 million for a 100-bed district hospital in Shama. Meanwhile, the same Vice President who did the program yesterday says that when we built the 130-bed Shai Osudoku Hospital for $38 million, we had inflated the cost. Yet he's doing a 100-bed hospital in Shama for $39 million. But if you come to district hospital, we have like 14 district hospitals.
In 4 years or
in 4 years? In 4 years. President Akufo-Addo does not have, or he says he has 2 polyclinics. Let us grant him that. 2. President Mahama has 22. Including the Kaswa Polytechnic, which is an 80-bed polyclinic, I beg your pardon, which is an 80-bed polyclinic, and bigger than some district hospitals that exist currently. There are some district hospitals that have 60-bed capacity, but the polyclinic in Kaswa, which was part of the community development component of the Kaswa interchange, actually has 80 beds, makes it bigger than some district hospitals. And then, I've spoken to you about CHIPS compounds. There are health centers. We have over 38 of them. In addition to this, we did what we call the Hospital Equipment Replacement Program. We spent $273 million equipping all public hospitals with modern equipment. That is something President Akufo-Addo has not done. We have a teaching hospital in the shape of the University of Ghana Medical Center. We have a regional hospital in the shape of the Ridge Hospital. We have institutional hospitals like the Maritime Hospital, the Bank of Ghana Hospital. President Akufo-Addo has none of those. On what basis, therefore, does he claim that he has done better than President Mahama or President Mills in the area of healthcare? Let's talk about water. Yesterday, the biggest project I heard them discuss was a project that gave about 785,000 liters of water. And then this morning, I have woken up to very mediocre pictures of some polytanks sitting in some corners, some solitary, unplastered, uncompleted toilets, single toilets. And I've seen speed ramps, I have seen renovation of kitchen of headmaster's bungalow, all lumped together as achievements that Dr. Bawumia put out yesterday on the website that they've created. Now when it comes to water, whereas I acknowledge that needs differ, and so there are remote communities that are underserved or are not served. So a borehole may be critical, or a polytank may be critical. We have thousands of those, but we do not show them when we come to speak about our achievements, because we believe that they are so mundane that they don't require to be highlighted. However, the NPP does not have big ticket items when it comes to water provision, and so they are unable to highlight them. When we come to water provision, we have major water projects like the one you showed, the Kwon Water Expansion Project. It is a project that produces 40 million gallons of water a day. It serves 700,000 people who live in the northeastern part of Accra and parts of the eastern region. At least 80 communities benefit from that. We have the Teshi Desalination Project, which produces 9 million gallons of water a day. It serves 500,000 people who live in the eastern part of Accra, Teshi, Nungwa, Tema, Lashibi, and other areas. We have the Achimodan, Akwetia, Winneba Water Supply Project. We have the 5 Towns Water Supply Project, which gave water to Chebi, the president's own hometown, and places like Osinase. We have the Isachi Water Project. We have the Kufuodia, sorry, I beg your pardon, the Insawom Water Supply Project. Indeed, national security alone under the NDC, they had what they call the Human Security Program. They dug over 500 boreholes. There's a small entity called the Community Water and Sanitation Division under the Ministry of Works and Housing. They had 3 programs financed by the World Bank. And together, they dug over 4,000 boreholes. I even suspect that some of the boreholes that they are passing off now actually are the products of those programs that we launched. So when you put all of this together, we added about 102.7 million gallons of water per day to the production capacity. Indeed, at a certain point, because of that, there's another one called the Accra-Tema Metropolitan Water Supply Project, which covers Accra and Tema. If you put that together, the 102.7 million gallons of water served 7 million people living in 2,000 communities, including very remote communities. So the reason why we don't highlight those small polytanks and other things is that we think that in this day and age, no government should be taking credit for relatively mediocre achievements.
But do you still think so, since they have started it?
We don't need to do, you see, what is the impact of the polytanks that they are talking about? How many people are served with it?
Well, there are many people who are going to that website and then obviously are thinking that that is an achievement.
There's no shortage of achievements. There's nobody in Ghana who doesn't know about the Kwon Water project. Nobody in Ghana can say they don't know about the desalination project or the Insawom Water project or Isachi. We have highlighted them over and over and over again. Everybody who is candid will appreciate that when you are given resources as a government in this day and age, those are the things you ought to be able to account for. So while not discounting those small projects, I am making the point that they are too mundane, too basic to be highlighted. And the government that highlights it shows a certain clear deficiency, which is that they don't have big ticket items to show. Now let's go to aviation. And they themselves put out a slide President Akufo-Addo's biggest achievement in aviation is that he says he has achieved 90% completion rate of the Kumasi Airport Phase 2 and 3. To begin with, Obi. And then he says that he's working on the expansion of Sunyani Airport. And then some other, and then Tamale. He says it's 30% complete. You see, Obi, again, it pales into insignificance when you set it against what President Mahama did in aviation. You see, President Mahama, he boasts of the rehabilitation of the arrival hall of Terminal 2. That arrival hall is world class. It compares to any arrival hall anywhere in the world. And you have been around a bit, so I'm sure you appreciate that. In addition to that, he has Terminal 3, which is an ultra-modern 5 million passenger processing capacity a year. It is the best terminal in West Africa and one of the best in Africa, such that it has made the Kotoka International Airport one of the best airports in terms of service delivery in the whole of Africa. And I dare say that it is one of the best anywhere in the world. Everybody who has used it has been full of praise for it. In addition to this, President Mahama built a brand new airport at Ho. In addition to that, he completed the first phase of the Tamale International Airport, which extended the runway and made it possible for night flights to move in and out of Tamale, and started work on the second phase. When you go to Kumasi, the Kumasi International Airport is a 3-phased project. The first phase involved the extension of the runway and provision of aeronautical equipment. That is the reason why today you can fly into Kumasi at night. Indeed, President Mahama is on record to have flown from Europe to Kumasi at night, doing as a way of testing the capacity of that airport. When he finished, he secured 65 million euros to build a terminal. That is phase 2. He got the money. Parliament approved it in November of 2016. President Mahama cut the sword for it on 5th December 2016. There was a third tranche, which was 53 million euros, which was going to be used for the third phase. Now, that project is like that. The second and third phases were going to be built together. Because whereas the second phase provided a terminal, the third phase was going to provide additional facilities like air bridges, parking lots, and other facilities. But that money delayed a bit, again, because of the World IMF's limits on borrowing. So when Akufo-Addo came into power, that money came. And it went into the third phase. So as I speak to you, out of the 3 phases, President Mahama accounts for 2. And therefore, his contribution to that airport is bigger than what President Akufo-Addo is passing off. So, and then there's also the Wa airstrip, which President Mahama expanded. If you put this together, it completely dwarfs anything that President Akufo-Addo has done in aviation. Now, still in the transport sector, let's talk about maritime. Maritime has to do with ports and harbors and whatnot. Obi, as I speak to you, the biggest capital investment under the Fourth Republic is the MPS Terminal 3 at the Tema Port. It has more than doubled the capacity of the port. It is now the second biggest port in West Africa after Lagos. It cost $1.5 billion to do. It is the single biggest investment in the maritime sector, perhaps in recent history. That is President Mahama's handiwork. Before that, over 100 million Ghana cedis had been spent on another expansion where they provided a berth at the Tema Port. We did a reefer terminal. A reefer terminal simply means containers that are cryogenic. In other words, they are frozen. So you plug them into electrical power sources so that they can be kept frozen. We did that at the Tema Port. In addition to this, President Mahama found 300 million euros to do the Takoradi Port expansion project and completed it. It expanded the capacity of the Takoradi Port such that it could receive large capacity ships bringing in oil and gas shipments. He also found another 300 million euros for the second phase, but we could not begin it before we left power. And so President Akufo-Addo came, inherited the money, and under very shady circumstances set that aside and engaged in another transaction to get new money to do it. But as I speak to you, there's no outcome. What is there is the first phase of the expansion project done by President Mahama. In addition to that, President Mahama expanded what we call the Albert Bosomtwe, what do you call it, fishing harbor in Sekondi at a cost of about 54 million yen, I believe. So these are President Mahama's offerings in the maritime sector. Again, they dwarf anything that President Akufo-Addo has done in the maritime sector. Now let's talk about rail. And they make a lot of noise about rail. Yeah. But Obi, I can tell you, that the most significant projects in the rail sector are the handiwork of President Mahama. First of all, President Mahama put in place what we call the Railway Master Plan. It is that master plan from which all rail projects spring now. In addition to this, he did what we call the Secondary Takrady Kojo rail project. It's a 17.1 kilometer project. It has 3 modern terminals, train terminals, where people can join. And
was it completed before?
It was completed. It was inaugurated, or it was commissioned in November of 2016. Then President Mahama got $398 million from the Indian Exim Bank for what was known then as the Tema to Akosomo rail project. It has become Tema to Impakadam because it's been extended by a few kilometers. That, to date, remains the single largest investment in rail transport under the Fourth Republic, if not in the entire history of Ghana. President Akufo-Addo merely inherited the money. And you see, the way that thing works, Exim Bank funded projects are such that the money doesn't even go through government hands. The bank disburses the money directly to the contractor. In some instances, they actually pay suppliers to purchase materials and ship it to the contractor. So whether President Akufo-Addo became president or not, that project was going to go on. And therefore, full credit goes to President Mahama. So that is President Mahama's record in the transport sector. If you come to the, communication sector, today, the biggest data center in West Africa is located beneath the offices of the communications industry. It has 500 racks and has ultra-modern facilities to house the data of both public and private sector organizations. In addition to this, we did what we call the Eastern Corridor Fiber Optic Backbone, a 521 kilometer fiber optic cable, which has opened up that corridor to high-speed internet and data and bridge what we call the digital divide. In addition to this, we did over 100 community information centers. There's one of it in my own hometown, Bakrampa, in the Abra Asibo Kamankese, what we call the district. To date, it remains the biggest ICT center in that particular constituency. And it is, if you check the Green Book, it is there. We have provided full information. In addition to this, we did what we call the Accra Digital Center, which was supposed to be a grade A plug-and-play facility for BPOs, business process outsourcing, organizations. Lately, its whole concept has been turned over its head and it's being used for all manner of things. But it's on your screen now. Yeah. These are 18 shares that used to belong to the Public Works Department, which we took over, and at a cost of 8 points. That's the data center. Yeah. These are the coolants. Because of the high volume of processing, it generates a lot of heat. So that is a coolant for you. It is beneath the building of the Ministry of Communication. Basically, it's an underground. That is a communication sector for you. In the energy sector, again, the biggest investments in recent history. I don't know the value of the Akosomo Dam in terms of how much it will cost now. That is the money that was used to construct it then in the 60s. But at least under the Fourth Republic, the biggest investment in the energy sector has been done by President Mahama. One of the biggest is the Tuabo gas processing plant. Almost $1 billion went into it, and it is perhaps the most significant addition to our energy infrastructure. It processes about 180,000 metric tons, standard cubic feet, 180 million standard cubic feet of gas a day. And that is what feeds some of the thermal plants in the Tuabo enclave, such that it is able, or they are able to generate power to ensure that we have continuous electricity to go about our activities and businesses and domestic usage and what have you. That is there. President Mahama put in the Ameri power plant, which added 510 megawatts. He put in the car power ship. Initially, it was designed as 2 separate ships. But when we took delivery of the first one, which provided 250 megawatts of power, we simply said that instead of doing another one, they should simply do a combined one so that the smaller one will leave. And that came when President Akufo-Addo came to power. There's a SEN project. There's Asogli, phase 2, which is 180 megawatts. There's a Senate plant. There's a Jacobson plant. When you add it together, over 2,200 megawatts. Indeed, yesterday you noticed that Bamia was claiming that we had excess power, which was costing us $1 billion. The reason why nobody fears doing so today is that we have adequate generation capacity, more than we need. So that today, the criticism has moved from shortages of electricity to oversupply of electricity. It takes a visionary, somebody who sees far, to be able to do things such that we are not going to have a shortage of electricity, at least generation capacity, in the foreseeable future. So these are only a few of the many things and accomplishments of President Mahama. And yesterday, Vice President Bawumia was simply not able. He was not able to show that he had done anything superior to the record that I have spelled out.
After all was said and done yesterday, the NPP claimed that they had achieved 78% of their manifesto promises, with 22% pending.
That is not true. You see, we've done a scientific analysis of the NPP manifesto. They made 631 promises. Indeed, when they did the analysis, they claimed that they did, 386 or so. It is not true. It is just a case that they are running away from their own promises. And when we did the analysis, we found out that only 14% of those promises had actually been kept. In fact, if you check page by page, you will find that a staggering 86% of the promises have not been kept. And indeed, one of the examples that I cite often is page 13. That is where their promise on the economy was contained. If you go to page 13, they promised that they will grow this economy in double digits. That means that it will grow above 10%. They promised that they will reduce borrowing. They promised that they will reduce the cost of doing business. They promised to stabilize the city. They promised to ensure that, our taxation regime is reduced. None of the commitments they made there has been fulfilled. Indeed, they promised to ensure fiscal discipline. And Obi, I will go through this briefly for you. They promised double-digit growth, 10% and above, over the 4 years that they will be in power. It means that starting from 2017, they will grow at 10%. Since they've been in power, the highest growth they've achieved is 8.1%. Even that was influenced by oil, because in 2017, oil production grew by 80% because of the coming on stream of 2 oil fields, the 10 fields and the Sankofa fields, which the NDC had worked on. In fact, as early as November 2016, the IMF, the World Bank, the Economic Intelligence Unit, Fitch, Moody's, and all the international financial organizations had predicted that we will grow above 8%. Indeed, I think on the 3rd of November 2016, when President Mahama was commissioning the Accra Data Center, in his speech, he stated that we were going to grow above 8% because of the investments that he had made. So it came as no surprise. If you disaggregate the growth in 2017, you will find that non-oil growth was around the same figure, around 5%, as it was in 2016. So it means that they didn't do anything substantially new, except for the addition of oil resources. Since then, growth has been declining, and last year it was 6.5%. This year, we will have the worst growth rates in 37 years of 0.9%. I even suspect that it may go in the negative, so that we will have recession for the first time in about 37 years. If you look at inflation, inflation is expected to rise about 15%. If you look at our debt, they promised to reduce borrowing, yet our debt has risen from 120 billion Ghana cedis in 2016 to 255.7 billion as of June this year. That is an increase of over 130 billion Ghana cedis. They promised to reduce borrowing, but they have borrowed more than all other governments before them combined. They promised to ensure fiscal discipline. Now, fiscal discipline is measured with what we call the fiscal deficit, which is the difference between your revenue and expenditure. You are allowed to spend more than you earn as a country by up to 5% per our laws. But the ideal situation is to have a surplus. In other words, you spend less than you earn in revenue. Now, in 2018, despite the promise to ensure fiscal discipline, and I've told you that the fiscal discipline is measured by the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit was 7%. Mm-hmm. In 2016, when we were making noise about the economy, the fiscal discipline was 6.3%. In 2019, it went to 7.5%. This year, it will go, according to them, to 11.6%. We estimate that it will be around 15.6%. Our debt to GDP ratio in 2016, you see, and debt to GDP ratio is important because that is what allows you to see if your debt is sustainable. In other words, can you pay the money that you are borrowing? And there's a threshold of 70%. When you cross it, it means that you are highly indebted. You are not able So you do what you call the debt sustainability analysis. And if your debt is 70% of your GDP, it means that you are not going to be able to sustain your debt. You can't pay. So you go HIPIC. You become a highly indebted poor country. Indeed, recently the IMF has said that we are at risk of high debt distress. Now, all these things I've mentioned constitute a violation of the promise they made in page 13 of their manifesto. They promised that they will reduce taxes. And you see, sometimes they play a trick on the people of Ghana. They say that they've removed 17 taxes. It is not true. What they have done is that they have removed one tax, which is VAT, on about 15 products. You know, VAT is a tax that affects thousands of products. So if you remove it on 11 items, you cannot say that you have removed 11 different taxes. Now, after removing VAT on 11 items, they have increased VAT by 5% on the thousands of items left. So we are now paying 20% effectively, instead of the 17.5% that they came to meet. In addition to this, they until recently increased the ESLA tax. ESLA. No, it is still in force actually, by an average of 27%. Meanwhile, they opposed ESLA. Communication service tax was increased by 50% until recently, when they came under pressure from President Mahama, who had vowed to, reduce it by that margin that they increased it. Until recently, they also had introduced the luxury car tax, which meant that you paid between 1,000 and 2,000 Ghana cedis, depending on the capacity of your car engine. Fuel prices have gone up close to 30 different times since they came into power, despite the promise not to increase fuel prices. You know, they made a promise in their manifesto that they were going to reduce corporate taxes from 25% to 5%. And indeed, let me indicate that only this afternoon, President Mahama has announced that all small businesses who pay up to 15% of corporate taxes in our country are going to be exempted from corporate tax. So if you're a small business, you are not going to pay corporate tax. If you're a medium-sized company, it has been reduced from 25% to 15% for you. So there's a 10% reduction. Yes. And medium-sized businesses that employ up to 20 people will have a 10% reduction for about a year. And these are the biggest tax incentives ever in the history of Ghana for businesses. And I'm sure the opportunity will present itself for us to discuss it. But I was talking about the NPP's promise to remove corporate tax, which they have not done. In fact,
that's in the manifesto.
It's in their manifesto. It's there. In fact, they also promised to scrap the National Fiscal Stability Levy. Indeed, that actually was an issue of law, because the law that brought it into effect said that between 2013 and 2017, that tax was going to be there. So in December 2017, we had what they call the sunset clause. It means that in December 2017, that tax must go. President Akufo-Addo extended that tax, and it exists today. By extending it, it had effectively become a new tax. So it's a new tax imposed by President Akufo-Addo. Then there's what we call the special import levy. There are two components. There's a 1% component, which fetches about 15% of all the revenue from that tax, and a 2% component, which fetches 85%. They promised to scrap it. There's also a sunset clause that says that it should be scrapped, but they kept the 2% component. So if you put all of this together, they have not kept their promise to reduce taxes. Again, they promised that they were going to make the business climate easier by having business-friendly policies. As I speak to you, there's a plethora of evidence of businesses having to increase the cost of their products because of increased cost of production. A few examples come to mind. You remember Accra Brewery, Fan Milk, and all those companies, those who do bottled water, have had to increase their prices because VAT was increased. Indeed, one of the clearest examples was the Telecoms Chamber, who announced sometime in 2018 that because VAT had been increased, they were also going to increase their, their prices by 5%. So that is not evidence of easing the business climate and making business easier for the business community of Ghana. And this is in addition to government's refusal to pay road contractors and people that it owes. So if you put all of this together, they simply have not kept the promise to, deliver a set of outcomes in terms of the management of the economy.
Okay, so moving on, this year was christened the Year of Roads by the NPP. Is it that the NDC virtually did nothing so far as our roads in this country ask?
Nobody has done more roads than the NDC under the Fourth Republic. If you check the Green Book, I think between pages 100 and 110, we list over 1,000 routes, and we give a regional breakdown. Some of the biggest roads, let me use Accra, for example. The Ofosu Road is one of the best roads in the country. It had a community development component, which included the Ofosu Clinic, which the NPP refused to open for 2 to 3 years when they came to power. It had schools, it had markets, it had lobby parks. The Ofosu Solar Road is a 147-kilometer road. I have used it. One of the best roads in Ghana. It had as many as 55 community development components: markets, schools, water systems, clinics, and what have you. The Gifford Road, which runs from 37 to Lati Junction, has been done. The Burma Camp Road, phase 1 and 2, that is what people call the Mahama Road. Fantastic road. The one that goes to Palace Mall, that is there. And you know that you've seen some pies that go into East Legon. Yeah. It was supposed to be a flyover, which has been abandoned by this government for reasons best known to them.
I wanted to take you back to the Pokwase Road, where he talks about the NDC government negotiating for a 3-tier overpass interchange, and then they negotiated for a 4-tier one, and it cost the same.
You see, first of all, let's just put it. Yesterday, Dr. Bamia was saying that they are constructing 4 interchanges, ultra-modern interchanges. That is not true. Those 3 out of those are President Mahama's projects.
Why will they say that it's their project?
Well, but they believe that Ghanaians are unaware, and that we will sit down for them to do that kind of thing.
I wanted you to educate us on this 3-tier, 4-tier.
But I wanted to establish the premise that those are not Akufo-Addo's projects. They are not his handiwork. What had happened was that when President Mahama got money to do the Kwame Nkrumah interchange and the Kaswa interchange, he also found money to do 3 interchanges. The Tema Motorway interchange. Indeed, sourcing for funding for that started in 2013. By 2016, the money had arrived, $55 million from the Japanese International Corporation. All that President Akufo-Addo had to do was to take the money and have the contractors do the road. Even I can do that. You can do it. A secondary school student can do that. But the most important part in project development is funding. If you have money, all your problems are solved. It is only a matter of engaging the right contractor to execute the project. That is why you give credit to the one who found the money. And that is how come President Kufuor takes credit for the N1, even though almost the entire construction took place under President Mills. That is why President Kufuor gets credit for Bui, even though almost the entire construction took place under President Mills and President Mahama. That is why President Kufuor gets credit for the Gang of All Roads, even though it was Dr. Dufour under President Mills who found $200 million, because that road project was being financed through Government of Ghana funding. In other words, it was not funded. There was no dedicated funding line. It was being financed from the national budget. And you and I know that the Government of Ghana almost always does not have money. So Dr. Dufour had to float bonds of up to $200 million to do those roads. Yet, credit goes to President Kufuor because he was the one who initiated them. So in the same vein, President Mahama will take credit for every project for which he found money. So he found $35.6 million for the Ubechemilamte interchange, and then found $83.6 million in November 2016 for the Pokwase interchange. Now, Dr. Bawumia makes a very bizarre, and I regret to point out, pedestrian argument that simply because the Kwame Nkrumah interchange cost more than all the 4 put together, there's something wrong. You see, a vice president is not allowed to speak that way. You can forgive an NPP serial caller who may be uninformed on the subject, who speaks this way. But the vice president cannot speak this way because he has access to information.
So this is not the first time he's speaking this way.
But you see, that is why it is our duty to correct the facts. For the avoidance of doubt, every project is different. And the way that you assess the value of a project is the scope. Now, in other words, if you bought an S-Class Mercedes-Benz today, there are some of them that cost as much as $150,000. They are more expensive than Land Cruisers. It is more expensive than 4 Toyota Corollas put together. But the argument Dr. Bawumia is making essentially is that because they are all cars, they should cost the same. So Pokwase, because it's a 4-tier interchange, must cost the same as the Kwame Nkrumah interchange, or less. Ubechemilamte circle must cost the same as the Kwame Nkrumah interchange. The Tema interchange must cost the same as the Kwame Nkrumah interchange. That's why I'm saying that is pedestrian thinking. It is not the thinking of an intellectual. An intellectual will look at what you call the scope of works. In other words, what kind of work is being done there. And let me put it on record that the Obechevilamte says, sorry, the Kwame Nkrumah interchange is the biggest interchange in Ghana as I speak to you. In fact, it is made up of 2 different interchanges. There's what you call the Kwame Nkrumah interchange, which actually is made up of 2 bridges and goes through what we call Franofa Road, from where the GCB tower is, right up to where the Ghana Telecom is. There are two of such bridges. The other one goes into a loop that joins the big one. But that is one set of interchange. It comes with its own ancillary work. There are 3 bridges that were done across the Odo River to allow people to cross from the other side of the Odo River. Then the other one is called the Ring Road Flyover and ancillary works. Now the Ring Road Flyover is the one that starts from the bridge around the Glyco office and ends up around the Awudume Cemetery. That is the biggest road bridge in Ghana. It has a length of 1.2 kilometers. Its width is 24 meters. It is a 6-lane road. That is 3 going, 3 coming. In addition to this, 3 kilometers of road was done between the Ring Road Central and the Ring Road West. And it's a 3-lane dual carriageway. Widening of the Fair Oyo Road between the Ghanaian Times Junction to TV Africa into a 2-lane dual carriageway. Now, the section of the Ring Road shall be recycled for the construction purposes. Now, in addition to this, we did a lorry station for both the Odo station and New Plan station. There is a water fountain. There's a police station. There's an emergency post. We built a 2-story office complex for the Ghana Road Transport Union. The road in front of Mechanical Lloyd was done. Again, because of the size of that interchange, you need to look at the amount of work that went in and then compare it to the others. And I have the scope of work. The reason why Dr. Bamia was not able to speak to the scope of work yesterday is that he knows that it will expose him. In fact, in order to construct the Ringway flyover, the engineers had to dig what they call piles. Essentially, there are big trenches that form the foundation of the interchange so that it becomes firm on the ground. They dug 2,000 of those. For the Kwame Nkrumah interchange, that is the 2 bridges I've spoken about, they dug 560. If you put it together, that is 2,560. If you want to compare that to Pokwase has only 478 piles.
Well, we don't have too much time. So.
If you go to, again, if you go to the Tema interchange, that one, they didn't do a bridge. They just dug underneath the road so that a bridge can go over it, so a vehicle can move over it. Now, if you come to Pokwase... I
have to...
Oh, it's unfortunate. You
know, now, yes, I wanted you to tell me about your constituency.
Oh, it's going quite well.
What are your chances?
Oh, the chances are very
Is it coming back to the NDC?
Absolutely. It has always been an NDC seat. For some reason, internal disagreements, it went to the NPP. Unfortunately, the NPP MP has not justified the confidence reposed in him, and the people find the need to change course and revert to the NDC. But we are not taking chances. We are not complacent. We are working extremely hard to convince the people as to why it is necessary to return the NDC to vote for President Mama as president and myself as MP to ensure that they get a voice at the national table.
Very well. We wish you all the best. The Honorable Felix Ofosu Kwakye is former Deputy Minister for Communications, and he's representing the good people of Abra Asebu Kwamankase in the upcoming elections for December 7th. We are grateful for your time. We'll be back same time next week. I'm sure that you don't want to miss what we will come up with. But in all things, remember that with God, all things are possible. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Obobia Dakun Opoku.